people think that a big tax refund is always a good thing. And what that really speaks to,
it's a free loan to the government.
It's a free loan to the government,
Right.
and it's probably an issue with your withholding, right? So you want to make sure that number is as close to zero as possible. You don't want to owe anything. You don't want to, you don't want to owe, obviously, but you don't want to get a huge refund either.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about the financial stuff they don't teach you in school? I'm Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Senior Financial Planning Associate William Metcalf. Each week, we bring you practical advice on retirement investing and planning for your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Let's get started. Hey, William.
Hey, Casey. How are you doing?
Good. So it's a countdown to meeting your
baby Metcalf. Yep.
Yes. Girl.
Baby girl. Yep.
Baby girl.
Yep.
What's the date?
July the 14th.
Woo.
Yep.
She'll be ready to go. She'll be so ready to go to the hospital.
That's
a hot baby.
Yeah, exactly. My wife just had an appointment yesterday, and the baby was measuring ahead of what they were basically predicting at the 32-week appointment. So maybe the baby will come a little early. So we'll see.
Maybe. I don't know. Our first baby was a July 10 baby, and has a miserable summer for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, all right.
Full time.
Here's what we're going to start with today. I put in my phone here 5 pieces of advice for a new dad.
Okay.
All right. So I try to keep it on the humorous side.
Okay.
Number 1, sleep is for the weak. Just remember that. Sleep is for the weak. So forget about 8 hours at this point, 20-minute nap.
I'm getting it in now. That's what I'm doing.
You're accumulating sleep hours so you can use more. Also too, is that you ever notice that dads kind of have a dad sway? You know, dads don't stand still.
Okay.
You know, because you're holding a baby, you immediately start kind of like thinking, okay, we got to bounce.
Just make sure
and
it
you
stays
don't
asleep.
you don't lose that sway. It's like you
Okay.
look at these old guys and they're standing there kind of bouncing around. You know,
I think I have noticed
remember
that.
like on the Braves, Rockin' Leo, you know, he'd always sit in the bench and he would do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop, man.
Yeah.
So embrace that.
Okay.
Also too, baby talk is going to invade everything. No one will talk normally at your house ever again.
Good to know.
It's going to be
I'll prepare myself now.
Look at your little baby. Look at your little baby.
I'll start preparing myself.
Yes. You're going to have to get used to that. And, right. Mr. Snuggles and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Also too, I think as any child gets older, you become a jungle gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My kids today go, how come you never get in the pool? And I'm always like, because you guys ruined it, because I couldn't just get in the pool.
Just to relax.
You guys were like climbing all over me, had red marks and scratches.
Yeah.
And I just became the jungle gym. But I think the coolest part about being a dad though, is there's no official paper license for this. It's a known thing, but it's the lifetime license to tell dad jokes.
Okay. Good.
So before it's just amateur hour.
Yeah.
But now, you know,
really got to sharpen that skill.
You can tell the worst jokes ever and people just have to giggle and you get a pass. So hopefully those help you out.
Okay. Yeah. That's helpful. Helpful information.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about financial stuff they don't teach you in school. You know, we have really smart clients, and when they come in, even they struggle with some of these. So hopefully these are all be on topic. Let's talk about taxes first.
Yeah.
Marginal tax brackets.
Yeah, I think the most common thing that I hear is that so this is actually a story that I heard somebody recently tell me, that their mom or their dad actually did not take a raise at work because he thought he was going to get bumped into the next marginal tax bracket and then pay all this extra tax. And it's like, that doesn't really work that way, right?
Right.
So your dollars from the bottom tax bracket, let's just say 10%, up to 23,000, they only get taxed at 10%. And then the next amount, so that amount over 23,000 gets taxed at the next bracket and so on. So all of your earnings are not getting taxed at 24% when you cross into that bracket, right?
Even on TurboTax, they tell you what your average payment
the effective tax rate.
So even if you're in the 37% tax bracket, you don't get all your money taxed at 37%. Your average is probably around 24.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a big one that I hear is like, if you're still making more money, then that's probably a good thing.
Right.
You know?
I explain it this way to people. People go, oh, well, I don't want to make, I don't want to do any extra work because if I get any extra pay, it just all goes to taxes.
Right.
And it's like, no, it doesn't. The worst case scenario, 50% if you do state tax, local tax, and the federal tax bracket.
Right.
So if you add up all that stuff, you'd still have 50 cents more
Right.
than before you started the day.
And yeah, it hurts to hear that 50% of your money's going to, taxes. So I don't want to downplay that.
That's only people who are making over 600 grand a year, right?
Right.
I mean, for most normal people, you're probably keeping 75% of it.
Exactly. And that's not even talking about deductions and things
What happens is you get extra money, but you don't have tax withheld.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to the end of the year and you have a bigger tax bill and you think, oh, I made an extra 10 grand. I had to pay 9,000 in taxes. That's because something's wrong with your withholding.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And that's kind of going right into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is, people think that a big tax refund is always a good thing. And what that really speaks to,
it's a free loan to the government.
It's a free loan to the government,
right.
And it's probably an issue with your withholding, right? So you want to make sure that number is as close to zero as possible. You don't want to owe anything. You don't want to, you don't want to owe obviously, but you don't want to get a huge refund either.
Correct.
That's
correct.
Probably the best situation there.
Yeah. Withholding can be difficult, especially if you're in a job that has variable income.
Right.
But yeah, it's actually probably better to owe them.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, but a lot of people don't like that.
Right.
But if you have enough in savings and
yeah,
have reserves for such thing, it's really not that big a deal.
I understand the stress factor aspect of that, but getting a couple $1,000s back from the government, it's not good. You could have been using that income throughout the year,
Right. Well, a couple $1,000s seems like okay. What I see sometimes people getting like $20,000 refunds,
right?
And I go, okay, we need to fix this, and they go, oh no, this is how we like it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then you need to have discipline in another way.
Right. Exactly.
All right, let's talk about housing.
Yeah. So
buying is always better than renting.
Yeah.
What?
I think a lot of people, maybe this is just younger people, but that don't have a lot of life experience, myself included on that, right? I think a lot of people in my demographic are very fixated on like, I need to buy a home. I need to buy a home because it's almost for a lot of us like this, not unattainable, but it's like it's tough to get to that point. And I think that because of that, there's sort of like a mystique around it, like this will fix all my problems.
Right.
When in reality, that's not necessarily it's not going to save you money. Maybe it will in some ways, but in other ways, you're going to be, if the HVAC craps out, then that's on you,
Right.
So I think that people don't always think about those things.
I think you definitely have to add up the true cost of ownership. If you can get a realtor to tell you that when you're looking, or maybe going back to your dad for advice.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
It's a good resource.
And say, hey, what's the real cost of owning a house? And you compare that to your rent.
Yeah.
And then you might say, probably in the scheme of things, it all shakes out to be about equal. I don't know what it does. I think owning a home would be cheaper because you are building equity. The price, the value of the home goes up. But I'm a little biased there. I mean, I think I never had to rent an apartment. My first place I lived outside my own house growing up was a townhome that I had purchased.
Yeah.
But I purchased that townhome for, I think it was around $100,000.
Yeah.
In near downtown Marietta, where you guys would have to spend $700,000 now.
Right.
So it's a different world. Or honestly, I've heard of some of my older son, he's a freshman in college. He has friends just ahead of him that have graduated college. Mm-hmm. They're buying homes in Cartersville.
Yeah.
Because you can join the Cartersville Country Club for $2,000.
Right.
It's a great course. They have a superintendent out there. They call him the sod master or the sod chief or something like that. I don't know, but the grass is always perfect. It's a great little track. And he could buy a house for under $400,000. Yeah. A decent home, a starter home, new construction. Right. So, there's some of that.
Yeah.
But when he drives to work, he has to go an hour each way.
Right. So that again kind of speaks to the whole thing. It's like, it's a lifestyle choice right now. Buying at least directly compared, like same house, you're actually paying a premium to buy right now just because of the way interest rates and pricing is here in Atlanta.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, obviously I think buying should be the objective for everybody if you're going to be in the same place for, a long enough period of time. But, if you're young and you don't have a lot tying you down, you're able to move around, then renting's obviously better in that situation too.
Yep.
You don't have to pay for the plumbing and, every little thing that comes up, the bug spray,
Correct.
all that stuff. So there's definitely advantages to both. It just depends on your lifestyle, I would say. So
Yeah, lifestyle, but also where is it you want to be? And I remember home prices can go down.
exactly.
So
We're going to talk about that later.
if you think you're going to work somewhere and but then you want to transfer out, or you work for a big company and there's better career opportunities, maybe it's better to rent because you're going to be here for 6 months to a year. You're going to be in Denver for 2 years, and you're going to be in LA, and then you're going to be back here. And then, when you decide to stop chasing the career, maybe that's when you buy.
Right.
So every family is different.
Yeah.
Don't
absolutely.
have house envy.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to convey.
Before we get back into the episode, have you ever wondered why annuities keep coming up as a recommended investment? While they're often pitched as a way to reduce risk and secure your future, annuities frequently benefit the salesperson more than the investor. Download our free guide, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity, at wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
Real estate is a guaranteed investment, and maybe guaranteed isn't the exact word that people use, but people do think of it like, if I have a home that I want to rent, maybe it's you want to do a rental or a short-term rental. People just assume I'm going to have a tenant in there, or that the roof doesn't need to be repaired, or, those sorts of things. Even in terms of like buying a home and living in the home, you're just assuming the price is going to go up. Right. So that's why if you are going to buy a home and you're going to live in it, it is good to know that you're going to be there for a while, because if the market crashes, then you're going to be there long enough to recuperate the value, hopefully.
Yeah. I say your primary home is never an investment.
Right.
I mean, if you added on to the house, if you painted your home inside or out, are you doing what you want to do? Are you doing what you think the market wants you to do?
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times what people like is different what the market likes.
That's true.
So we count it toward person's net worth, but unless the house is just, you spend $5 million on it, then I'd say that's probably a little different. But
yeah,
for most normal homes, I'd say this is just where I live. This is where I like to live. I've made it the way I like it, but I'm not trying to flip it or, where if you bought a second home, I would say, yeah, that's totally. Yeah. For most people, that's totally an investment idea. And we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Right. Exactly. That's a good point. Cause like the renovations you're going to do on a rental home are going to be a lot different than something you're going to do for yourself. Cause you're probably, it's going to get a little more wear and tear, and you're not using it. So you don't need all those, custom things that you might do for yourself.
Or even a vacation home. You maybe really like this one area, but maybe Airbnbs aren't allowed there, or so you would pick a different spot that's good for Airbnbs if you want to use it too. Yeah. Chances are, if the general public wants to be there vacation, you probably do too. Right. But the point of it is you think a little differently about it. You're buying it with a spreadsheet, not with your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Another thing that I've heard before is I don't make enough to invest. And I think, we've probably talked about this on the podcast before, honestly, but this is something that people have in their head. Everybody's different, but they have this idea that they have to be making this amount of money before they can invest, or, they have to have this dollar amount to invest. And that's not really the case. You can, open up a brokerage account or a Roth IRA or something like that. Or obviously, if you have access to an employer plan, like a 401k, small dollar amounts add up over time. And I think the most important thing for people to think about is that they are saving somewhere. Even if it is
start the habit.
Exactly. You need to start the habit. And I also like thinking about things in percentages. Think of things in terms of what percentage of my gross income am I saving, right. Not just dollar values. And I think that, if you build the habit of saving 10, 20% of your income, then that's going to really compound in the future as you start building your income and, progress in your job and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have estate planning. Estate planning is only for the rich or elderly.
Estate planning is for anybody that doesn't want their assets to get through or doesn't want a probate judge to decide what to do with their assets once they're gone.
Yeah.
So kids especially.
Yes.
You have a new baby, you should have a will, power of attorney, medical director. Do you have those?
We're getting those set up. So that's something
good.
we were talking about. We're having those hard conversations of like, okay, if we passed away, what would happen?
Yeah,
who's the
those.
guardian?
Those are tough.
Yeah. So
you always got that crazy uncle you want to keep them away from, right?
Yeah. Or put the finances over here. Maybe they're really good,
right.
Personally, but we don't want them to have the money, right? So
yep.
That those discussions are important to have, especially if you do have kids, or if you have, any sort of assets that are outside of retirement accounts. Those are going to pass through your will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that don't have beneficiary designations on them. So, if you care about where things are going to go, then you need to have those in place.
You want to at least have a basic will done. I mean,
And
the power of attorney,
power of
medical
attorney.
directive for when you're alive, and if you can't handle your own affairs,
Yeah.
but you're about to have a baby, something bad happened and you need to make decisions for your wife. It's not always default at you. It should be,
Right.
Probably won't have any problems, honestly,
Right.
but you should have a document created for that. Usually the hospitals require it. They even have free forms. I think if you
Mhm.
just totally goof it up, they
Yeah.
can they'll say,
Yeah.
sign here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great one. I think another one I add to this list is, politics. So people always assume that, their party is better
Yeah.
for the markets.
Right.
Democrats assume that the markets are going to be better because they're in charge.
Yeah.
That either party is really bad at the economy, the opposite of party that you want. Data doesn't support any of that. Data says you stay invested, and investing is actually separate from politics. Politics do intersect into the markets at times, like the tariff sell off, which is not fully recovered.
Right.
That's an example of a political move that disrupted the markets, because market doesn't like uncertainty,
Right.
how we're handling COVID, that had some positive and negative effects to the markets at that time. But in the end,
And on a micro level too, making decisions based off of that. Like a hunch is really just can be really detrimental as well. So there's the macro aspect, like you're talking about, for the entire economy, but then, you trying to make decisions based off of your political beliefs. That's probably not
I
good.
just posted this great image on X. You can find me at Bullish Pilot, BULL. The I is a 1, SH Pilot. But it shows out of University of Michigan. It shows this year's inflation expectations based on your political beliefs. So Democrats are expecting 9.3% inflation this year.
Yeah.
Republicans are expecting 1.3.
Interesting.
Independents are expecting 7.3. And so far this year, we're at 2.3.
Yeah.
Everybody, all the non-political analysts expect inflation to be below 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So it just goes to show you that Democrats are just like, this is a horrible economy.
And Republicans were saying that for the last 3 years.
And Republicans were saying that for the last 3 years. It's like this,
Yeah.
well, actually, we did really have really bad inflation.
And we did, but yeah. No,
In 2022, 21 and 22 were bad inflation. 23 it kind of flattened out again.
Yeah.
But yes, so it flips its head. Whenever your party's not in charge, you have these biases that are built in, which we just did a whole podcast series on biases. But yeah, that would be a myth. Also the other things like, people think, as long as I can live on 65 or 75% of my income in retirement, I'm good.
Yeah.
And those are arbitrary numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where does that come from?
Right.
It came from like a money magazine from like the 80s or something.
Yeah.
And it really has nothing to do with that, because your income may have supported you with all these debt payments, but once you get to retirement, you should be debt free. Once you're debt free, you could actually live on a lot less with the same lifestyle or better.
Right.
So I find that's a myth. I'm trying to think of
right.
other
Like if
ones.
you're saving a lot too, then that comes into play. Whereas if
Or
you're
paying
not
a lot in
saving a lot,
taxes.
if you're not saving a lot, then maybe you are going to spend pretty much the same in retirement, know? So
correct.
Totally dependent on what you're doing before and after.
The 4% rule is another myth that pops up. The 4% rule, I think, is fairly legit, actually.
But used in isolation.
But yes, used in isolation. People apply it wrong. It's really 4%. And then every year you increase the 4% by the CPI. So the consumer price index, the rate of inflation is how you do that. And no one really knows how to apply that. Like, how do you, you put that in an Excel spreadsheet is the best way you could do it. Mm-hmm. Most people are just doing back of the napkin math, decide they can retire on this 4% rule.
Right.
And that's not how you should look at it. We don't even look at it that way. We typically look at the Monte Carlo. So we're looking at 1,000 different possibilities of how people can
Right. And we're looking at
retire.
Expenses and then inflating those based on what type of spending they are as
Correct.
Well.
Yeah. Healthcare is going up by 5% per year. That's what we assume.
Right.
And so the living expense, hopefully it's going to be around 2.5 because the Fed's trying to target 2.
Right.
And you might have other things that would go up more, but yeah, I think the 4% thing is applied wrong typically. And also a bit of a myth.
Yeah. It's lacking context for sure. Like there's just a lot of other things that come into play other than that one number.
And then I think the biggest myth of all is how we feel.
Can you explain that a little more?
Well, just like so many people come by and they're just like, I sense that there's a stock market crash coming. I sense it. Mm-hmm. There's no data supporting it. There's no economic data. Like people right now feel this is the worst economy ever. This is really bad. Things are going to fall apart. And there's no data that shows that right now.
Right.
And so I just sense things aren't really good. Well, it's because you got a guy in office who does not look like anybody else in the past and he does some crazy things.
Right.
And so you feel uneasy, and that's understandable. I'm going to be empathetic toward that.
Right.
But that's not the reality for the economy in itself. It doesn't matter who's in power. Delta's going to sell seats. Coke's going to sell cola.
Right.
Right. So the question is, are people still buying seats on the airplane, or are people still drinking Coke? And the answer is more than ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we had to dial back. We had to dial back a little bit scared because of the tariffs, and that's just uneasiness. But you're starting to see things kind of return to normal, and you're starting to understand that maybe there is a path over the next 4 years that we could get a balanced budget and things of that nature.
Right.
But yeah, it's just how you feel about something. How you feel is influenced by where you get your media, and a lot of the media just isn't right.
Yeah. 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 We talked about that recently because there's a lot of negativity in that as well. So if you're consuming that all the time, then it's just going to make you stressed out and it'll have, you'll have that bent in how you feel about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good, quick conversation about some of the things that I think people get mythed about. What we used to do for once a year for financial education. I think that's actually in February, financial planning month or something like that.
I think so.
But we would go through all these acronyms and terms and we would explain them. We probably should bring that back someday.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's an old episode that we probably could link in here somewhere. But just understanding what different terms mean, like APY versus APR, and all that somewhere. That's Hadley can find that in our history there. I think we're taking notes. All right, so thank you, William. Looking forward to meeting your baby girl soon. If you want to learn more about Wiser Wealth Management, you want to come work here with Michaela or with Shauna or myself, William, and Grace. We have a great planning team. You do so by clicking in our show notes or going to wiserinvestor.com. We'd love to chat with you. Talk to you soon. See you next week.